Hello, my name is Mr. Chipman. Teach biology, AP Biology at Murray High School in Murray, Kentucky. And here we are in AP Environmental Science 1.9 trophic levels. So in order to understand trophic levels, you have to understand the flow of energy. All energy in all ecosystems originates in the sun, or at least most ecosystems, right? You have producers producing food, you have things consuming that food as well. And all ecosystems require this constant input of energy in order to have energy at the highest levels of the ecosystem. As you change that energy, you change the number of organisms that an ecosystem can possibly produce. And so the way that we talk about these levels is about using the term trophic level. Trophic is basically the way the word trophic means to like nourish or feeding levels. And so we think of these trophic levels as just different, like literally like a pyramid is oftentimes how you're going to see them represented. You have producers at the bottom. They're called producers because they are producing sugar. That primary productivity that we looked at in the last section, they are producing sugar. Everything else is a consumer, right? Primary consumers are first consumers. What are they eating? Well, they're eating producers, right? Secondary consumers are second consumers. They're eating primary consumers. They may also be eating the producers as well. And then your tertiary consumers are eating everything underneath. And then sometimes, every so often, you'll see a level 4 consumer, which is actually pretty rare. Level 4 consumers are actually pretty rare, which we're going to get into why that is the case. A couple things here about the structure and function and just sort of how this works in an ecosystem. Structurally, these trophic levels just is basically telling us who is eating who, right? There's a certain amount of just looking at that and saying, okay, the grasshoppers are eating the grass, the shrew is eating the grasshopper, and that big-armed frog is eating the flies or whatever. There's certain things that you can see when you look at this. But it's also telling us a lot more. The population sizes are bigger at the bottom trophic levels, right? There's more mice and grasshoppers than there are big-armed frogs, and there are more big-armed frogs than there are snakes, and there are the least amount of hawks in an ecosystem. It's telling us a lot about that. That pyramid is helping us understand that. It's also showing us functionally what's going on in an ecosystem. Notice where all of them are being eaten. The decomposer is breaking down all of them because the decomposer is returning those nutrients to the ecosystem. And we've already learned about nutrient cycles, and so we know the importance of these nutrients being cycled throughout the ecosystem. We can also see energy moving in this ecosystem, which we're going to look at in a second, and how if you just took out, let's say you took out big-armed frogs, well, there's going to be a change in the structure here, right? The frogs are no longer eating the something, and the snakes are no longer eating the frogs, and you have this sort of disruption. So it's really easy to see that when you see it in a picture like this. We talked just briefly mention this, and I just to mention it again. It's very important to understand in an ecosystem, not only is the matter being cycled, but energy is as well. Now, the issue with energy, and we'll go back to this one, we're going to talk more about this in a future section, is, and maybe here, this one's actually better, is that energy is not transferred like matter is. When a snake eats a rabbit, it takes that rabbit and digests it and makes more snake out of it, right? And it's one-to-one. A carbon doesn't become something else, right? It's another carbon. A nucleotide, an adenine, in the rabbit is going to become an adenine in the snake. Energy is not quite the same, right? Energy, when that snake eats the rabbit, some of that energy is going to be lost. It's going to be lost as heat, right? Some of it's going to be lost as waste. Some of it is going to be used to keep the snake alive. Some of it's going to be used to allow the snake to reproduce. And once that hawk eats the snake, there's even less of that energy available for the hawk. We're going to talk about this specifically when we get to Rule 10%. But this is an important concept, that energy is not transferred perfectly in an ecosystem, even though matter, it does sort of have a perfect transfer there. A couple of examples to help sort of solidify this. The pyramid shape, we mentioned the importance of that pyramid shape. It's not on accident, right? The bottom level is sort of the base, the structural component of that. I like the ones that have the arrows all going out to decomposers. This one has the heat going off of it too. I just noticed that. And so it's important, the structural component there. But also, if you were to take a piece out, right? This is the idea of a trophic cascade. If you were to take these frogs out of here, right, what's going to happen to the pyramid? It's going to collapse, right? And some organisms are so important, these are usually called keystone species, that when you take them out, it causes the whole ecosystem to change. Wolves of Yellowstone, very important example here, that if you take them out, it even causes the trees to sort of change shape, which causes the rivers. And there's a great video on that. You should check it out. You've probably seen it before, is my guess, if you've been to middle school. And so these are important ideas, sort of using some of the things we already talked about to bring this idea to bear. Some practice. In a coastal marine food web, we'll talk about food webs in a later section, phytoplankton are consumed by zooplankton, which are then eaten by small fish. Which of the following best explains the role of phytoplankton? Phytoplankton seem to be at the bottom, don't they? Are they recycling nitrogen? Probably not. They're not decomposers. They serve as an apex predator. Nope, they're being eaten, which is the opposite of an apex predator. They convert solar energy into chemical energy and form the base of a trophic pyramid. I like that question, or that answer. The answer is C. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, give me a like. Ask me a question. If you need any help or if you have a question about the content, please ask down in the comments. I would love to respond to your comments, but we're going to be doing 1.10 very shortly.